This is the Speaker's Lounge. I am Meredith Grundy, your public speaking go-to, and I do these series once a month, every first Monday of the month at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. And today we're going to talk about presentation, preparation, and practice. So really looking at how you're preparing and structuring your presentation. And then what are you doing to practice? Because there's a lot of different ways that I have seen my clients practice, some habits maybe developed that weren't the best practices for presenting, and then also how we start thinking about our content and what's important and how to prioritize certain things. Now, I've worked with people who are creatives to people who are incredibly technical. And so I have a lot that I can add to this conversation. And I hope it will be a conversation. So if you are watching right now, you happen to be on LinkedIn or on YouTube, and you want to leave me a comment, I would love to know, A, that you're here. So please say hello. And then secondly, if you have questions, please put that in the chat. And if you have an idea for how to also help people, please put that into the chat. I definitely have structures and philosophies, methodologies, if you will, for things that I feel will help individuals. But I do know that there's a lot of wisdom out there, and I don't know everything. So let's help each other out. And to start, what I would love to share is I over the years have done a lot. My background, as some of you may know and or don't know, is that I come from a background of performance where I've been in shows that have already been written, like a play, for example. There's a playwright and the script in hand. And then I've also been able to perform in productions where we started from nothing. We had an idea, we had an organizing principle, and then we developed our own pieces of work. And I've done that as well with a solo project that I did a couple years ago. And there's always that question of how do you start? Where do you start? And I would imagine that there's many of you who are like, I don't even know where to start when I'm putting together a presentation or a talk. Maybe I've been invited to speak on something that I'm passionate about, but I've not done that before. So let's talk simply about that. Where does one start? Well, I first like to encourage people to really think about structure. Let's just think about how can we at least start getting those ideas out there, generating a brainstorm. And so I always say to people, start with who your audience is first. Figure out who is it that you want to be serving. Maybe you're already invited to an audience. And so figure out who they are and what they know already, what they don't know, and then what they do need to know by the time you're done talking to them. So then once you've really clearly established who those people are, whether it's an audience that's already established for you or one that you hope that you get to speak to sometime, that's going to help you then figure out what is that objective that you have for that particular audience. What is that end in mind? So then you shift into that end in mind. You get really clear about your objective. What is it that you want them to leave knowing or doing? Get clear about that. And then once you've gotten clear from that, you can take it to the third step, which is establishing what the key takeaways are, the need to knows are that are going to lead your audience to that end in mind. Those are the stepping stones. Then once you've established that, then you can start thinking about visuals or props, the things that are going to enhance that message. Now, what I have noticed is that sometimes people will start with the visuals first because either that's what they know, that's what they've been taught, is to start with the deck, or they've been handed a deck that they get to deliver that maybe somebody else had put together. In any of these circumstances, if you can put that to the side for a moment and think of those first three things at the start, then looking to your visuals, that's going to help you get really clear. And then I'll start to help you get more clear about, okay, now that I've got that established, what stories can I start to fold into my presentation? And where can I fold those stories into my presentation? What am I going to use for my hook to really get my audience engaged and leaning in at the beginning of my presentation? Just like when you go see live performance or theater, no one is standing up on a stage and saying, "Hey, thanks for coming to the show tonight. Uh, this is our first preview. We might have some technical well, if it is preview, they might say that. But if you're at the opening night performance, they're not going to come out on stage and give you a whole speech before the show starts, hopefully. They're just going to open the curtains and they're going to allow that performance and that world to really hook you in. And so that's what we want to do with our presentations as well, because life is too short. At least that's how I feel. So then your stories, your hooks, how are you going to hook them in? And then how are you going to engage your audience? Not just through the stories and the hooks, but are you getting them interacting with each other? Are you asking them a closed-ended or open-ended question? How are you getting them engaged? And how are you doing that depending on the platform? Are you virtual? Are you engaging them virtually? Even in meetings, how are you engaging your audience and keeping them awake and interested in what you are talking about? And then same with the stage. Are you using props? Are you doing things a little bit differently? So that is how I would talk about the preparation and the steps in which we prepare. So just to review the last several minutes that I've been talking, I simply said, start with your audience, know what your end in mind is, that objective that you have for that particular audience. Then establish what the key takeaways are. Maybe it's 3 to 5 key takeaways, the need to knows. And then lastly, looking at those visuals, asking the question, are they even needed? Because sometimes they're not, and that's okay. And you should be able to talk about your subject without the slides. If all the tech went out, what would you do? It would be up to you to keep holding the space for that audience unapologetically. So now let's talk a little bit about uh, practice. Practice is a toughie because I have met so many people who will scroll through their presentation, sitting at their desk, looking at it, maybe mumbling a few things out loud to themselves, if at all, and not getting up on their feet, not walking about the space. Well, this is a disservice to you and a disservice to your audience when you're not embodying the material in the way that you can. Here are suggestions for you. When you are practicing your presentation, once everything on its feet or up, you've gotten everything figured out, get up on your feet and start talking it out loud. Start talking that story out loud. Start finding ways that you can make it more concise if need be. Start to feel, the more you talk out loud and you start to really understand your material in that way, that's when you can start to see where the gaps are. You start to hear how it comes out of your mouth. And then you get to further explore that material and it's easier to retain. Now, do you have to memorize? No, but you have this beautiful outline that you get to follow. So just go through that outline. Allow yourself to stumble through it. That's where you're going to find the gaps. Then do it again and again and again. That repetition and practice is what is also going to build your confidence. Again, if something throws you off, you can get back on track because you are well practiced. It's when we don't give that piece of the process enough of our time and our energy, that's when it can be really hard. And that's when our confidence can be shaken. And that's when our nervousness, which is natural, instead of it turning into an excitement and how to serve and best serve your audience, it can turn into anxiety. We can start getting into our heads. And then that's a really difficult place to put ourselves in. That's a difficult place to put your audience in. And look, all they want to do is see you succeed. They are there to just listen and learn and be inspired. They want you to succeed because it benefits them. So know that all of those people are there to support you And hello, Patty. It's good to see you. I've just been talking about the practice process in presenting, and we talked about how to properly prepare. And thank you, Sonita, for that tip about, or that you liked the tip about the embody the presentation. And it is about the full body approach towards presenting. It's not just about being on stage and being a talking head. We've all sat through those. And I will challenge you that if you can remember the presentations where someone was just a talking head and they didn't show their genuine passion and interest in their subject, that you're most likely you don't remember that information. But those that fully embody and they show their passion and their genuine interest in the subject that they're presenting because they are there to serve, those presentations we remember. And that's the point. Otherwise, why are any of any of us doing this work? So thank you for that. If you do have questions about preparation, how to enter in, and what to start with when you're presenting or putting together a talk, or if you have questions about how to practice, please go ahead and ask those questions in the chat. If you yourself have ideas or things that have worked for you, please put those ideas into the chat too. I am a big believer that we are all here to lift each other up. And so the more knowledge that we can share with each other, the better we all rise, the more we all rise. A couple more things about practice. Not only is that repetition going to help you feel more confident, be more embodied, but there's also other ways that we can be practicing when we can't be speaking out loud. Some of those ways are recording yourself, playing it back in an audio way. So maybe you're listening to yourself, sharing your presentation with yourself, if you will. There are ways where you can practice in the car actually out loud. You can practice on tools like Udly, which is a wonderful AI tool that you can practice and record yourself. I always say to people, I hear the advice to practice in front of the mirror. We've all heard that one. And to also play your video back so you can make adjustments. So here's what I want to say about that. The mirror, I don't know if that's a great tool or not. I personally feel that it's one of those practice suggestions that could quite easily put you back into your head because you're getting really self-conscious about your gestures and your own behaviors. So I would say practice in front of the mirror with caution. And then if you're going to practice in front of video and then play that video back, be really clear about what you're specifically looking for. Try not to get too judgmental of yourself or our own worst critics, but look to just see, hey, was I using gesture? Was my eye contact good? Was I using too many filler words? And this is the beautiful thing about Udly. If you do use that as a tool, is that it will give you those analytics about filler words, inclusive language, and if you could use stronger word choice. And that's a wonderful tool to have. But be very intentional about what kind of feedback you are looking for in yourself if that's something you're going to do. Also, I would say you can send it to a coach. That's also another thing you can do is say, hey, can you please look at this and give me further feedback? So it depends on how high stakes this presentation is for you. We got another comment here, so I'm going to read this here. Hi, Meredith. What are your best tips for being engaging, delivering a 45-minute keynote to a Zoom audience? I'll be standing and I don't want people's eyes to glaze over. Yes, that's a great question. Here's something that has really worked for me, and I know that there's probably other ways, but I always love to get people engaged the second they start to come into that virtual space. I usually have a question that is popped up on the screen. So recently I just did a talk for Amazon. I'm doing a training for them right now. And so the question is like, what is your public speaking superpower that you want to gain after this training together? And so then people can put their answers in the chat. And what I love about that is that I get to reflect those back out loud as people are coming into the room. So it's almost like my version of the handshake and the eye contact. So I'm warming up. They're coming into the room feeling welcomed. They get to think about something, put it in the chat. And then what happens is we start to see also each other's commonalities, and you realize, oh, some people are here to develop the same superpower as I am. How cool is that? Or, oh, somebody's pain points are the same as mine. How cool is that? So that way no one feels so alone, and that people and I get to know who's in the room. I get to know who my audience is a little bit better. That's one way to engage. Another way is to do activities throughout that are relevant to your topic, putting people into breakout rooms, having them come back. But I feel that in those instances, it's the brief that's important. You learn from that. How can you apply that to a real world circumstance? So finding ways to engage them in that way. Using humor is also a really wonderful way to engage people, as long as it's coming from a place of truth and it doesn't feel like it's forced, because that's when humor can kind of fall to pieces. uh Amazon, woo! It was such a wonderful facilitation, such a beautiful group of humans that I get to work with, so I feel really grateful for that. um and that those have been very fun and very engaging. Seth Godin, I believe yesterday, just posted one of his blog posts was about if game and I'm not gonna totally gonna summarize this, generalize it, but if gamers can sit there all day in their chair on a screen and be completely engaged and interactive, we can figure out how to also engage and be interactive, when we are not just holding a facilitation and presenting on Zoom, but also how are we holding our meetings? How are we keeping people engaged and interested in what's happening? It is so crucial and so important, because the virtual space is not going away. And oftentimes I've been called to not just present virtually to the same group, but I've been asked to present the same material virtually as well as in person. So really being adaptable in that way is important, I feel, moving forward. And so we might as well be developing those muscles as we go. So other ways of if you have any other questions about engagement, and I hope that answered your question. I just see LinkedIn user, otherwise I'd use your first name. I hope that happened with your 45 helped you with your 45-minute presentation. Hello, Claudia. Good to see you. Good to see you. If you have questions about preparation for how to better prepare for a presentation. I'm very tired today, you guys. I took this dance class yesterday and it kind of kicked my butt, and I have sciatica. Totally side note, but I'm just letting you know. and, then, um, and then the second thing is better ways of practicing. So if you have any questions for like, oh, I run into this wall, or I really feel like I don't know how to better prepare for a presentation, please ask those questions. That's what this 30 minutes is for, is to help you out. Because I really want people to feel confident. I feel like there's so many brilliant humans out there who are not getting heard enough. They're not getting on enough stages because the fear of public speaking is a real fear. And I acknowledge that. And it is easier for some. But I feel like there's so much brilliance that gets lost out there because of that fear. And so if there's anything that I can do to help you feel more confident in any approach to public speaking, please let me know. Please put those questions in the comments. And if you yourself have things that have worked for you, please put those in the comments. Like we have our LinkedIn user who asked about ways to engage their audience. I gave an idea. If you have other ideas, share the wealth, share the information. Let's all add value in each other's lives. That's how we all rise. Yes, Seth Godin as well, Meredith Grande. Yes. He has so much wisdom, and I met him in person not too long ago. So that was really lovely at Creative Mornings. And if that's something in your area, I would definitely attend one of those Creative Mornings. Cool. So other ways that we can engage. I have noticed that people will do polls. Polls are great. I personally haven't done one yet. I just haven't felt the the pull, gravity pull to do that. Uh, but what I will say is that when I have witnessed polls, and I have witnessed them both live and virtually to engage people, is just make sure you know who your audience is. I went to, I believe, I think I was in Houston, Texas, and it was this big speaker conference, and the room was global, and one of the polls was, who do you think is going to win the Super Bowl? And look, I am going to admit here on LinkedIn, I am not a football person. I don't watch I will watch the Super Bowl if there's queso involved, but otherwise I don't really know anything about what's going on in football until the Super Bowl when everyone starts talking about it. So for me, that poll has no relevance. Like I don't care. So, and also it's a global community of people, which their football looks very different than than our football. So can we at least have a third question there, which is what's football, or what's the Super Bowl, or that's not the football I know, whatever. Just making sure that you're being inclusive of your audience. You know who's there, who's sitting in the house. So I feel like that's a big one. There are other wonderful ways. There's fun things that have been invented over the pandemic to keep people engaged. So that's a little bit of homework. Oh, I'm so happy for you to have met the purple comet. Yes, it was very nice. He's very lovely. So any questions, any other questions, or any of you who are watching right now who are like, oh, here's something that I did that really worked in engaging audiences, or here's something that I've done in the past that has helped me practice and practice well, or here's something that I've done in the past to help me generate better stories or find better hooks or structure my presentation well. I've given some ideas here today, things that have worked for me, things that have worked for my clients. And so I'm always excited to hear what questions you have, and also advice that you also might offer to people. Excellent. And I will also recommend that if you have never done a live just by yourself, whether that be on TikTok or Instagram or here on LinkedIn, that is also a really great way to practice your extemporaneous speaking skills and how to hold the space and engage with an audience. And so I am purposefully doing these once a month so that I can also have my practice time and get to know you, my community here on LinkedIn and on YouTube. My perspective on tonality. Well, I do feel that having certain fluctuation of tonality depending on whatever that key takeaway is in your presentation, or what is it you want your audience to do, I feel that finding variation in tone is important to keep them engaged for sure. I like to look at a presentation as an experience. It's an overall experience. So what is it, if you can purposefully build in those moments where in this section I need my audience to lean in more, or in this section I'm going to show that I am more enthusiastic, or in this point I need them to know how serious this is. I feel that it's really very important that we are clear about how we are coming across based upon whatever that information is that we're trying to relay, and the emotion, the energy, and the tonality that we put behind it. Oftentimes, what I hear is that people fall into a cadence and they stay in that cadence throughout the entirety of their presentation, rather than creating an experience that's like a composition, if you will, for their audience. And so that tonality plays into that composition, and it's important to get our audience more engaged and taking them on that journey. Best method I use to prepare my pres. Ooh, it's coming. It's coming. And Claudia, I hope that answered your question there. Something that I do with clients is that we'll go through their script, if you will, or their outline, and we'll mark those places. What is it that you want your audience to feel here? How does how does this message here feel to you, and how do you want to drive that home? So when we're more purposeful and intentional about that and we're crafting something together. Excellent. Yes. I see it's, your presentation, a type of a performance. I don't expect presenters to be actors. They're not actors. But your presentation is a form of performance. And so if we can approach it in that way rather than getting on stage and just talking and sharing information, and instead looking at it as an experience, I feel that we're going to be much more impactful presenters. Yes, emotion. We hear it over and over and over and over again. If you're on LinkedIn long enough, almost everybody talks about have an emotional connect, have an emotional connect, have an emotional connect. In branding, we hear it. I mean, come on, speak up, Patty. In branding, all the time, emotional connect, emotional connect, emotional connect. There's nothing different with a presentation. You should have an emotional connect. That's why those stories are so important. That's why your hooks, all of those things are so incredibly important. And building that experience is going to leave your audience wanting more. That's what we want, right? We want them to leave wanting more. We want them to leave educated. We want them to leave inspired, so that our time isn't wasted and their time isn't wasted. Okay, I recently prepped for a talk by practicing mostly with my Otter AI app. Yes, I always recommend Otter AI because then you can also send that transcript to yourself, which is super helpful. Because I could walk around with my phone, yes, and hear myself understand how long the talk was and have a transcript of the phrases that felt particularly resonant. Beautiful. I would say yes, and yes, and yes, and I'm so glad you said that, Sunita. And the other thing I love about Otter AI too is that when you're in that kind of practice mode and you're trying to figure out how can you be more concise, is that you can, let's just say, just open up Otter AI and tell your story in 3 minutes, and then cut that time in half to 90 seconds, and then cut that time in half. See what emerges, what was important, what came up in the second version that was 30 seconds that you didn't say in the 90-second version. And then that's also a really wonderful tool to use for that as well. So I'm so glad you said something. You're crying. Patty's crying. Follow-up question. What if polls or breakout rooms aren't an option and you've got to fill 45 minutes? Should I use my hands? Be sure to move on the screen, shifting feet, etc. How can I make it a performance? I love that when it's just me the whole entire time. That's a great question. Yes, use your hands, physicalize it, be standing up. Don't worry about too much gesture on Zoom. That's my personal opinion. Personal opinion. Don't worry about it. I hate it when people get in their heads about gesture. And I know that's not the question you asked, but I'm sharing it. What I share with people is physicalize the storytelling. Here I am sitting here talking to you on LinkedIn and YouTube. I'm very excited because later on today, right? I'm gesturing later on today. I'm physicalizing the storytelling. So really be thinking about that instead. Uh, I feel that you can give people activities even if you're not putting them into breakout rooms. So, for example, I'll give people an activity. So, for the next 5 minutes, I would like you to brainstorm X. Or for the next 2 minutes, I want you to think about the one thing. Or ask them again the open-ended question, have them engage in the chat. You get to reflect that back. So there are things that you can do where you're not putting them in breakout rooms and you're not doing a poll that will get them and keep them engaged. So I hope that answered your question there. And if it didn't, happy to talk to you after the LinkedIn Live as well for more ideas. People will remember people will remember you when they can connect with the story 100%. And remember that when you're telling the story, to try not to be generalized about the story, but give us some details. Share with us how you felt in the moment. And because when we share those details and we share how we feel, that's when people start to see themselves more in our own storytelling. And that's when we really can hook them and engage them more. Because if you just say that you live in New York, that's pretty general. But if you say that you live in a specific neighborhood in New York and you like to go to a particular restaurant or deli, anyone who's been to New York can go, oh my God, I've been there too. And then it starts to become more relatable. That's why those details are so important. Uh, I believe, yeah, if you're going to ask people to reflect, it's okay to be quiet. It's also I've also encouraged people, clients in the past, to maybe play music, especially if you have a time frame. So if maybe find music that you've timed out for 2 to 3 minutes. You can have that playing in the background. But yeah, silence is powerful and we can use more silence in our presentations. So I like that you answered that question, Nancy. Thank you. Yeah, physicalizing the storytelling. I'm glad you liked that one, Kevin. So it's 12:30. I'm only here for 30 minutes, but I do the speakers lounge once a month, the first Monday of every month at 12 p.m. Eastern time. I do it for a few reasons. I do it for one reason is because I like to practice getting out here, doing this solo, connecting with my audience. I do it to add value, and I have a different theme every month. So if you have ideas for things that you would like me to speak on, please feel free to reach out to me. Let me know what that is because I'm here to help you. It's not just about me, it's about community. So please share those ideas with me. And hopefully, I will see you again back here next month, same time, same place on LinkedIn and YouTube. So thanks for all of the fabulous questions. I really appreciate it. And I will see you all next month. Take care.